All right, guys, we're back. Come on, everyone, cameras on. We only have about 2 more hours to go. Cameras on. All right, great. So, I'm going to go over taxes due on closing. There's state taxes on the deeds. There could be also state taxes on the mortgage, depending on the states. So this is going to be brief. We're going to move right on. So certain transfer taxes are due in connection with the closing. They will appear and are accounted for in the closing statement. These include state taxes relating to the deed and to the buyer's mortgage. In addition to state-imposed taxes, counties and municipalities may also impose a tax on the real estate transfer. Now, most states, not all, states impose a transfer tax when real estate is conveyed. The tax is usually paid when the deed is recorded, often in the form of a documentary stamps, purchased from the recorder where the deed is recorded. The stamps must be attached to the deeds and conveyances before they can be recorded. Tax rates. Guys, very important. Tax rates are specific to each state. So the numbers are here are just an example. So, methods of stating the transfer tax due, including quoting the tax as a percentage of taxable consideration and as a dollar rate per hundred of the total selling price. So if the number of hundreds is not a whole number, it must be rounded to the next hundred. For instance, if property sells for $350,120 and the tax rate is 55 cents per hundred, right? Then we must round the numbers. Look, 350 120 divided by 100 is 3,501.20 cents. We're going to round it up from the 20 cents. We're going to round up. It's going to be 3,502. We just round it up. No matter what, for realty transfer fee or state taxes or anything like that, for transfer taxes, we round up. So now we're going to apply the rate of 55 cents on the 3,502. That means you have to pay 1,926 in state recording taxes or realty transfer fee. Some states also impose taxes on instruments that contain promises to pay, like a mortgage, note, or contract, and these taxes may be paid by the purchase of documentary stamps from the agency, which will record the instruments. In addition, some states can also further impose a further tax on mortgage as an item of intangible personal property. Guys, make sure you're off your cell phones. We're in class. Thank you. All right, so we're going to go over an actual example of a case. Guys, off your phones. Thank you. All right, so we're going to go over an example of an actual case. So if somebody purchased a property, right? And how would it be applied at your closing statement? So here's the example. And before you get scared, this would not be a question. This is just, again, an illustration of what could happen. So for instance, Lawrence and Sandy Binder, they have accepted an offer on their house located at 928 Elm Street, Lilleberg, right? The buyers, Bill and Dillis Waite, offered $450,000 with the earnest money of $70,000 and the remaining $380,000 of the purchase price to come from a new conventional loan from Scepter Mortgage Company. The loan is for 30 years at 5.5 interest with a monthly principal plus interest payment of $2,158. the lender's charging 1.5 points and a 1% origination fee, and the closing is set to occur at Alta Title Company at 4 p.m. On May 10th of the current non-leap year. So they're giving you the whole scenario. They're giving the whole information about this particular case. The buyers, Bill and Dillis Waite. The sellers, Lawrence and Sandy Binder. Simple. These are the people in the transaction, right? The property that they're buying is 928 Elm Street. They're buying it for $450,000, and they put a good faith deposit of $70,000. So it's pretty much the down payment. They put it all up front. Like, we're definitely serious about this house. I got the down payment. Let's move the down payments towards the escrow company, and we're good to go, right? The remaining amount is going to be the loan, $380,000 at 30 years for 5.5% interest rate, right? And that payment is going to be $2,158. So I'm just recapping the scenario. Now, the binders, sellers, right, have an agreement to pay the broker a commission of 6%, and the broker is Littleberg Realty. Their unpaid mortgage balance, so on the seller side, the unpaid mortgage balance as of May 1st will be $184,000. Their monthly interest payments are $613, and the annual interest rate is 4%. The previous year's county taxes, amounting to $2,572, have been paid by the seller in arrears. The current year's taxes, not yet billed or paid, are assumed to be the same as the previous years. The parties agreed to prorate using, so the calculations we're going to go through is using the 365-day method, and the day of the closing belongs to the seller. The relevant facts and costs and who pays according to the terms of the seller are to the contract are summarized below. So these are the selling terms. We're selling for $450,000. Putting a deposit or down payment of $70,000, loan amount is the balance, $380,000. What will the seller pay? Well, the seller is responsible for paying the commission, the real estate taxes to be prorated or adjusted, right? The title insurance in this case, right, is $900. The seller's attorney, he's paying $1,500. It costs $25 to release the deed. It costs $550 for a survey. The transfer stamps right here. And they have to pay off their loan of $184,000 plus 10 days, prorated May's interest at $613 a month. The buyer is responsible for paying $450,000. That's a sales price. They get a credit of $70,000 because they're already prepaid, right? The appraisal fee, $400. $50 for a credit report. You see how it says already paid? These will be pluses in the buyer's side because they already paid, so it's prepaid for them, right? Closing fee, recording fees, title insurance, buyer's attorney, pest inspection, so termite inspection or something like that. The buyer's loan, which is $380,000, 30-year fixed. So what we're showing you guys here is that everything is going to come into play at closing. So all the information about everything we went through from day one until the actual closing is going to be, in terms of numbers, is going to be laid out in a closing disclosure. The commission, easy to calculate. Commission, $450,000 times 6%. We're making $27,000 in this closing, right? Which is going to be split with other agencies, right? Or with another agency. The real estate taxes, using the 365-day method, we figure out what the daily rate is, right? Which is $7.05, right? The total number of days is the number of days in January, February, March, and April, plus 10 days of May, because we're closing on the 10th of May, right? So we're looking at 31 January, 28 February, 31 for March, 30 for April, and 10 days of May. So we have a total of 130 days. That means that at closing, the seller's share of $916.50 will be charged to the seller, and the buyer is credited the same amount. Again, same amount. So how do we figure this out? We calculated already before. Total taxes, $2,572 divided by 365 is the $7.05. Those $7.05 we multiply by 130. That's how much the seller owes the buyer. $960.50. Seller's unpaid mortgage interest. Right here, the interest is $613 a month, if you guys remember, right? We're going to divide that by 31 days to give the actual daily rate for interest. And that means it's $19.77 per day in interest. Because we're closing on the 10th, we multiply by 10, then the seller is still responsible for paying $197 in unpaid mortgage interest. Loan origination points. If you guys remember, there's a 1% origination point. Point is 1%. 1 point equals 1%. And these are always from the loan, right? So loan points. Points are always percent of the loan. So the lender's charging 1% origination. That means that the lender wants $3,800 for originating the loan. And then they're charging points in order to reduce, if you guys remember what discount points are for, it's to reduce the lifetime of the loan's interest rate. So we pay 1.5 points up front to reduce the amount of interest rate we're going to pay over 30 years. So we're going to pay $5,700 to save maybe $20,000 or $30,000 over the 30 years. The buyer's escrow, I'm going to go briefly over this. The lender is asking for 8 months of taxes and 4 months of insurance. So if the taxes are $2,572, we divide by 12. This right here is the monthly rate. They're asking for 8 months. So they're asking the buyer up front, give me $1,714.64 so I can put aside towards taxes, just in case. They're also asking for $800 worth of insurance, which is 4 months of reserves in insurance. Let me put aside just in case these numbers are wrong. So we want to be protected. We're asking you, the lender is asking the buyer, please deposit these amounts up front to protect us in case the escrow is wrong or in case you, the buyer, default right away. So we're asking for that stuff. And so on and so forth. You guys already know how to calculate the 31 days and all that stuff, right? Let's move on to TRID. You guys already know this by now, so it should be easy. We've mentioned the TRID like 4 times already in chapter 17 and now here. This is all in green. It's a summary of what we got to go through. So very simple. TRID, which have merged the forms in October 3rd of 2015, now has new mandatory forms. The lender, step 1. The lender must give the consumer a copy of the booklet, Your Home Loan Toolkit, at the time of the loan application. The lenders must deliver or mail the loan estimate, which is a form 24, H24. You don't need to remember. You need to remember LE or loan estimate, to the consumer no later, it's in bold, no later than the 3rd business day. So booklet right away. Number 2 is provide the LE no later than 3 business days from the loan application. And an application to be complete is when you give 6 pieces of information: name, income, social security, property address, and estimated value of the property, and the loan amount sought. So the acronym for this is actually aliens. So that's the address for a complete loan application, right? That's the address. It's the loan amount. By the way, address of the property that you're buying, obviously. Right? It's the income, estimate of value, name of buyer or borrower. So let me do Danny's way. So name of borrower, and then Social Security. Okay. So aliens. The acronym you need to remember to have a complete loan application. Aliens. The address of the property you're trying to buy. It's the loan amount that you're trying to get. Your income verification. So let me write verification here. That means you've provided, you're not telling the lender, hey, I make $40,000 a year. You're showing them that you make $40,000 a year by W-2s and pay stubs, right? The estimate of value, the value of the property more or less, the name of the borrower, who's borrowing the money, and Social Security of the person's borrowing the money. So once we have all these in place, we now completed an application, and therefore the lender must give you a loan estimate within 3 business days. Did I lose you there? Alexis, you good? Okay. Everybody wrote it down? You're good? All right, good. Now, number 3. This is the final thing that they must do. That's why it's called a closing disclosure. Closing disclosure. So at closing, you must know already what amount you have to pay. How do you know what amounts you have to pay? By them providing at least 3 business days before the closing, providing you the closing disclosure or settlement statement that says, hey, buyer or borrower, this is how much you have to pay at closing. This is how much money you got to bring at closing. I'm going to give you an example of a CD in a sec. Okay? All right, so these charges, we talked about it. Applicable transactions. You guys should know about this already as well. That TRID does not apply to all of them. So TRID applies to residential purchases, if you guys remember. So it does not apply, the TRID requirements does not apply to home equity lines of credit, HELOCs. It does not apply to reverse mortgages. Does not apply to mortgages secured by mobile homes. And does not apply to loans made by persons who are not considered creditors. Okay? So technically, TRID only applies to residential purchases. I mentioned this in chapter 17, mentioned it earlier in the beginning of this chapter. Again, TRID only applies for residential purchases, federally related transactions. Okay? Okay? Closing disclosure form, also called as CD. Closing disclosure form. If I talk about CD, closing disclosure. If I talk about LE, loan estimate. Okay? So CD is divided into 5 pages. On page number 1, I'm going to show you these pages in a second, so I'm going to go real fast. On page number 1, we have general information, loan terms, projected payments, and the cost of closing. On page number 2, we have the details of the closing. On page number 3, it's divided into 2 sections. One for calculating the cash to close, so how much money the buyer needs at closing, and the other for summarizing the transactions between the borrower and the seller. And I know I'm skipping all this because I'm going to show you the actual CD and explain there. All right, page number 4, additional loan disclosures. And page number 5, additional calculations, disclosures, and contact information. All right? So with that being said, here's the CD. We are, so you guys know, we're on page 338. Make sure everybody's on this page 338, because I'm going to go over a CD with you guys. For a state exam, you don't need to know this in detail. You need to know what's presented in each page for state exam. In real life, yes, page 339. Thanks, Danny. Appreciate it. In real life, you guys need to know all the details here, and I'll tell you this because in one of the pages, it's going to show also your commission. So if for nothing else, at least for you to know that your commission is right. But my main goal about showing this to you is so you can help the buyer and the seller verify that their information is correct. What the buyer has to pay and what the seller has to receive. Okay? You want to make sure you help them go through it, where to identify these things. So the closing disclosure is pretty much, again, the summary of everything in the transaction. Sorry, just give me 1 second. All right. So here's what we got on the very first page. The date it was issued, the potential, the actual closing date, the disbursement date, who's the settlement agent, so the closing agent, right? Because you already know settlement means closing. It's going to show who's actually closing the transaction. The file, the property that we're closing on, and the sales price right here. Transaction information, who's the borrower, or in this case the buyer, Michael Jones and Mary Stone. The seller, Steve Cole and Amy Doe, and the lender, Ficus Bank. Loan information, this is right the header of the CD. Loan term for 30 years. This is for purchase. It could be for a refi, and in this case it's for a purchase. Is this an adjustable rate? No, it's a fixed rate. Guys, this is important information for you to help your clients. What type of loan is this? It's a conventional. It's not FHA, it's not VA or other. It's a conventional loan, right? Then loan ID and mortgage closing ID. All right, next. Loan terms. The loan amount, we're purchasing for $180, right? The loan amount is $162. The interest rate is 3.875. I want you to keep this one in mind for a little bit. All right, we're going to talk about this later. Keep it in mind. And then your monthly principal and interest, monthly PI, is $761.78. It will tell you if there's a prepayment penalty or a balloon payment. In this case, prepayment penalty is yes. Yes, Ruth, we're on page 339. Page 339 of the second edition. If you have the first edition, I don't know, I have to check it, but it shouldn't be too far off. It's the closing disclosure. It's the last thing of this chapter. The last thing, we're almost done. The last thing of this chapter is the CD. All right, so in this case, does the loan have a prepayment penalty? The answer is yes, as high as $3,240 if you pay it off in the first 2 years. Projected payments in the year 1 through 7, you're going to pay $761 principal and interest plus mortgage insurance of $82 and estimated escrow. By the way, estimated. Right? They tell you up front that escrow, if you guys remember, escrow is taxes plus insurance. They could change over time because taxes and insurance usually go up, especially taxes. So principal and interest is fixed. Taxes and insurance could change or increase over time. So as of right now, your estimated monthly payment for the first 7 years if your taxes don't change, it's going to be $1,050. Mr. Buyer, Mrs. Buyer, is this what you had agreed with your loan officer? Okay. If they say yes, let's move forward. If they say no, let's call the loan officer. Hey, what's up with that? It was supposed to be this much. Why is it that much? And by the way, I'm telling you this because we had the situation about a month ago. We had a situation where at closing, the numbers were different, right? So the buyer expected one thing, and then they are shoving down his throat something else. So make sure you guys review all this stuff with your clients. It's not our responsibility, it's the loan officers, but it is our responsibility to help negotiate. So if we see something that's off, let's talk to our client. Estimated taxes, insurance, and assessments are around $356 a month. Now look at this. Right in the first page, one of the things that it tells you that's so important, and you have the same thing in the LE, in the loan estimates. One of the things that's so important for you to review with your clients, at least 3 business days before closing, which is closing costs are $9,712, and cash that you need, Mr. Borrower or buyer, cash that you need to close, $14,147.26. So, Mr. Buyer, do you have that money? If you have that money, we're good to close. If not, can we close? If they don't have the money, can we close? Are you guys understanding this? That's why this page is like one of the most important pages that you have to go through with your clients. Figuring out they have the money to actually close. Right? On page number 2, now we have the closing cost details. How do we get to the $14,000? Well, easy. They're going to talk about origination charges, which the borrower pays. So we have here points, a quarter, right? Points, application fee, underwriting fee, appraisal fee, credit report fee, flood determination fee, and so on. And notice that there are 2 columns, which is what you're going to pay at closing, or credit report fee was prepaid. It was paid before closing, so it's a credit to the buyer. They don't have to pay again, right? We're itemizing it, but they don't have to pay again. Inspection, survey, title, and so on. Recording fees, homeowners insurance premium, prepaid interest, property taxes, and so on. Keeps on going. You see all this? All the details. There's an HOA, homeowner association, so we have to talk about the HOA here. And then there's something here on section H. I know you guys probably, it's not that clear. I don't know if you guys can see this or not. Is it clear for you, kind of? Can you see it? Okay, good. So of course you can see it, of course. Even if it wasn't clear, you'll be able to see it. It talks about your payment. And it says here that Alpha Broker is going to make $5,700, Omega Broker is going to make $5,700, and then you know exactly how much you're going to get out of this split. So you want to verify also that this is correct, your payment. Okay, because you're entitled to dispute this closing as well if the payments are incorrect. Right? And so on and so forth. All the closing costs, everything is detailed on the seller's side. What was already prepaid, what must be paid at closing. Everything is right here. And we get to the 3rd page that says cash to close. What I want to show you guys in the cash to close is this. There's the loan estimate, which was given to you right in the beginning of this transaction. And there's the final. Did these numbers change? They'll tell you, yes, it did. And then they'll tell you also why. Okay? But they changed. You were supposed to come up with $8,054. Now you have to come up with $9,712. Your down payment, $18,000, beginning and ending did not change. The deposit is the money you gave up front, $10,000. That does not change. But then look what we have. In the loan estimate, we didn't talk about seller's credits. but the seller gave you a credit of $2,500. And then there's other credits and adjustments, which we'll show in a second, of $1,035. These are the final adjustments of taxes or water to be paid or whatever. So, if everything was done right, in the loan estimate, you showed your client, hey, you need about 16 grand at closing, right? So if everything went well, 16 grand at closing. We get to the closing, hey, I'm sorry, you only need 14, right? You can give me the other 2,000 as a bonus if you'd like. Whatever. If you guys done things right, you know up front what they have to come up with at closing, and then this is the actual closing amount. Next section, the actual transaction between the seller and the buyer. So it shows how much the borrower must pay, which is $189,762.30. The sale is $180, but then they also have to come up with $9,682 and $80 for HOA. They already gave $10,000 plus the loan amount, right? Plus the seller's credit, plus rebate from the title company. All these adjustments show you at the end that the borrower was supposed to come up with $189,000 because of all the adjustments and the loan, right? They only have to come up with $14,000. On this side, it shows seller. You sold the house for $180,000, right? Plus the $80 for the HOA. $180,000, but you had to pay something. You had to pay $115,000, which was what? The loan balance right here. So they had $12,000 worth of closing costs. They needed to pay off the mortgage, so $100,000, and they gave a credit of $2,500. So out of the $180,000, they came out with $64,414. So if you represent the seller, this is the number you want to show them. If you represent the buyer, this is the number you want to show them. You need buyer $14,000, seller, you're getting $64,000. This more or less the numbers we talked about? If yes, great. If no, let's figure out what happened. Title company, loan officer, what are these numbers? Are you guys understanding? Right? This is something you're going to do for the rest of your realtor life. There's some things here in the book that we don't deal with again because either the appraiser does it or the title company does it or whatever, right? There's a lot of things we don't, or attorneys do it. So those are the basics or the foundation you need to understand. But these, you're going to go over and over and over again. So you got to make sure numbers are correct. Page number 4, it just tells you if you can assume the loan or not, if there's a demand feature, if there's a late payment fees, if there's negative amortization, if you can make partial payments, and so on. Gives you an idea of escrow, which is how much is going to be put into aside for taxes and insurance. And page number 5 is the final page. And it gives you the final loan calculations. You guys remember we bought the property for $180,000, right? I know this part is boring, but you need to pay attention because you will need it as you go. Loan calculations. You guys remember we purchased the property for $180,000. So why do we have $285,000 here? Well, but for $180,000, we put a down payment. The loan amount was $162,000, right? But over 30 years, we estimate they're going to pay $118,000 in interest. That means that this loan is going to cost you between purchase, right? I'm sorry, between the loan principal and interest is going to cost you over 30 years. It's going to cost you $285,000. You guys got it? And look at this number. This is a different percentage than what we saw originally, isn't it? a different percentage. What changed? Aren't we in the closing disclosure? And the closing disclosure said your interest rate was 3.875. Wasn't that the interest rate? What changed? Why is it now 4.174%? Anybody? What changed between the beginning of this document, not beginning of the transaction, beginning of this document, and the end of this document? This is the final page. Why 4.174? Nope. Not the points. Points are added, they're deducted. Anybody? Credit? Nope. Orphilia for the win. APR, called the true cost of loan or true cost of financing. APR, which is the pure or basic interest rate plus other charges. Loan charges, like carrying the loan, for instance, selling the loan later, servicing the loan. All those are added to the loan. So are you going to pay 3.875? No, guys. You're going to pay 4.174% every single year on this loan. The difference between the original page, the first page, I'm sorry, that the first page showed you the actual interest. This is the pure interest, basic interest. The final page is telling you how much you're actually paying for the carrying this loan, which is the APR. Okay, there's the basic. You guys remember this from chapter 17. There's basic interest, and then there's APR, right? The basic interest could be the same across the board. All the banks could give you 3.875 as a basic interest. But then the APR changes based on each lender's costs or charges the loan. And look what it says here. It also says this is not your interest rate. Okay? This is your costs over the loan term expressed as a rate. So the cost to carry your loan all the way is the interest rate plus these costs, which gives you the APR. This is the number we need to always know to calculate, to shop around. This is the number we always need to know to shop around. It's not this one, it's this one. They're giving me a 4.174. So Bank of America, what do you give me? Wells Fargo, what do you give me? All right, so go knock on doors and see if you can get a better rate than this. Not this one, this, okay? Now, quick question. When you guys go to a restaurant, and the service is good, do you give gratuity? Yeah, right, we call it what? We call it tip, right? We give a tip, which makes no sense. I don't even know why we call it tip. Right? Tip is like, hey, don't go out because it's raining. Give you a tip, it's raining, right? Why do we call it tip? It makes no sense. It's gratuity. But anyway, in the banking industry, we also give a tip to the bank. You guys know that? Give a tip to the bank. Does anybody know? How much? Actually, let me know in the chat real quick. YouTubers and Zoomers, let me know in the chat. If you have good service at the restaurant, how much tip do you give? I just want to know if I would be embarrassed to go out with you guys or not. How much tip do you give? Yana, you're looking a little pale. Are you okay? 50%, Alexis, let's go. Let's go. I'll pay for the meal, you give the tip. Perfect. That's it. I'll even be your waiter, man. I'll pay for the meal so I can get the tip. 50%. Jesus. All right. Everybody else is around 20%. Great. All right. How about this one? This is the tip you give the bank. All right, Alexis is the one closest, so the price is right, you win the prize. Anyway, 69%. So what is this tip, guys? What they're saying is the total interest percentage, which is this, in relationship to this. This is 69% of that. That's what it is. So over the 30 years, you paid $118,000 in interest alone. Again, that's 69% of the loan amount. So the faster you pay, the lesser interest you'll pay. The lower amount. This is projected over 30 years in this loan. Projected over 30 years. All right, now at the end it says who was the lender, who's the mortgage broker, who's the real estate broker for the buyer, for the seller, who's the closing agent. And here's what we need to do at the end. Confirm that you received this. Please sign. Date. No, that's not my signature, just so you guys know. Date. There's a co-applicant. Sign and date. You agree to all these terms, and we move forward. If something is wrong, correct it before the closing. Any questions before we move forward? Guys, I highly recommend you go over this LE and the CD, which are pretty much the same. You go over this as much as you can. Not so much for state exam. You need to understand what's on each page. That was a summary of that right before the CD. But in real life, go over it as much as you can so you can identify things. Because the seller and the buyer could ask you, well, Alexis, what's this right here? What's this amount right here? You have to be able to explain to them what it is, right? Very simple. And if you don't know, please don't act like you don't know, okay? Because you are their realtor. At least say, not my monkey, at least that, right? And say, hey, that's a great question. I see that the number might be a little off. Let's call the title company just to make sure. See that? Easy way to divert the question to somebody else. Not my monkey. Let's talk to the title company. All right? Simple. Simple, simple, simple. All right, to finalize, guys, the last thing we have is reporting requirement. Who must report to whom? Well, report to the IRS. So either the seller's broker reports, the buyer's broker reports, the settlement agent, which is the most common settlement, escrow agent, attorney, or so on. Could be even the mortgage lender or anyone designated by the IRS. Somebody got to tell the IRS. How do they do that? They file a 1099-S, which is for settlement. And that's pretty much what you need to know about closings. Any questions you guys might have? Good? All right, I'm going to give you guys a couple of minutes. YouTubers, if you have a question, put a question mark. Zoomers, if you have a question, put a question mark so I know that you're asking a question. If not, I will close this session. Okay, some people, they actually don't have questions. They pillow. All right. So, going once, twice. I'm either that good or you guys are completely lost. So it's one or the other. There has to be questions. All right, fine. Okay, guys. So if there's no questions, make sure you review everything. Watch the replay. Go over the review questions at the end of the chapter. Go over the Quizlet for this particular chapter as much as you can, please. And enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you tomorrow at 10 a.m. Thank you, guys.